Hi, it's Cara and welcome to another video. I have cats going a bit nuts, it's raining outside, but the lighting seems presentable, so let's get going. This is my July wrap-up. In July I participated in 2 readathons. I was mainly vaguely considering doing the reading rush at one point, but nah, it didn't happen. But I did participate in Medievalathon, hosted by Holly Hart's Books, and the Book Junkie Trials, hosted by Rachel Marie Book Junkie. And I have a lot of books here to show you, because I was a quest champion, which means I completed every challenge in the Book Junkie Trial. Okay, so I'm going to go through basically the order of how I have them in the book for the Book Junkie Trials of my checklist, just so I'm keeping track of all the challenges, but I will also let you know what they stood for Medievalathon as well. Which, to start us off, this first book was only for Medievalathon and it completed the challenge Bow, which is something featuring elves or fae, and for that I read Ghost of the Shadow Market. Oh, I need to zoom out a bit, don't I? We were real close. Ghost of the Shadow Market by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Ruth Brennan, Maureen Johnson, Kelly Link, and Robin Wasserman. I only read the last 2 stories in this, which are the ones not included in the ebook release. And I had thoughts on them. So the first one was The Lost World, which I liked. It was cute and sweet, and it was a fun time. Forever Fallen, on the other hand, absolutely terrified me. It was part cute, part terrifying. I'm scared for the Wicked Powers, but we have all our way through the other series first. What are they called? Chain of Girls, the first one. We have to deal with that first before we get to the Wicked Powers, but the Wicked Powers is terrifying me. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think she could pull it off, but I don't know. Spoilers. This whole series is super spoilery, but this is obviously the bind-up of novellas that follow Brother Zachariah from the Shadowhunter world. Okay, so the first book I read for the Book Junkie Trials was to completely challenge the Elven Guard. I was a bard, so this was my bard path. Oh, I almost shut the door. Oh, I also decided not to rate this because it's a bit hard to read anthologies. You were yelling! Now that I've shut some doors. The first book on my bard path was for, as I was saying, well, I had to shut doors, was for the Elven Guard, which is something with war, military, or political themes, and for that I read Artemis Fowl by Ian Colfer. This is a middle grade series. It was a reread. I've read this before many times, but I've never finished the series, so that's why I started again, because I haven't read it in many a year. And this follows Artemis, who wants to raise the family back into billionaire status instead of just millionaires. So he tries to steal some fairy gold. It's a fun ride, so enjoyable. I'm very glad that I reread this. I really liked it, and I can't wait for the movie, which is coming out very soon. I gave this 5 stars. It's just such a fun middle grade. Then for the Hollow Isle, which is something atmospheric or horror, I read Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This is a kind of like a Lord of the Flies retelling, queer, sapphic, following a bunch of girls that live on this private school on this island, but this thing called the Tox has taken over, and they all start growing weird things from their bodies. It's very body horror. I really enjoyed this so much. I gave it a 5 stars. I don't know why I had to check, just to check. I really enjoyed this. It does have an open-ended ending, which some people may or may not like, but I liked it. It was good. I really loved this. And I love the cover. This is the most gorgeous cover. Next up, for Empty Barrel Inn, which was an indulgent read, I read Space Opera by Catherine M. Valente, and this also completed The Bard Weakness, which is something featuring music or poetry. This is essentially Eurovision in space. It's very Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in its writing style, which I really enjoy, but might not be for everyone. And I had a great time reading it. I gave this a 4.5 stars. It is a little pretentious, which is that Douglas Adams-y thing going on, but I really enjoyed it. It was just so good. Oh my god, my abs are hurting. I need to bring this frame down. I need to remember that I need to be slouched when I vary my shot, because otherwise I'm like slowly falling off screen, but that's a bit better. Oh, I forgot, Artemis Fowl went for the Medievalathon challenge of boots, something yellowed over time, and Space Opera went for Chestplate, a shiny book, because shiny. The next spot on the Bard Path is The Giant Squid, an intimidating read, and for that I read Crown of Feathers by Nikki Palpretto. This came from my 5-star fantasy predictions, which are all chunky books, which is why I counted them as intimidating. So this was on my 5-star predicts. Unfortunately, I didn't give it 5 stars. The first half was pretty heavy in like info dumpy world building. It needed to be there, but I don't think, this is a debut and I just don't think the author has developed the skill yet to like organically weave world building in a way that doesn't feel info dumpy. I think it should get better over time. The world itself is absolutely fascinating. Unfortunately, I didn't care about the main character until like 2/3 of the way through, and then I was like, I like you. But for the start, I was like, I don't understand. But the plot twist at the end really got me, so I'm definitely keen to read book 2. I ended up giving this, I'm looking at it like just over to the sun. I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. It was good. I just think it's definitely has that debut quality that it could be better. I can't wait to see growth from this author, because I think the world especially was very complex and well thought out, just poorly, or not poorly delivered, just not delivered as well as it could be, if that makes sense. So I can't wait to read book 2, because the plot twists at the end of this one were killer. And finally, for the final part of the Bard Path, which is the Bookie Grail, obviously I read Stardust. It's the group book for the Book Junkie trials. I enjoyed this a lot more than a lot of other people did. Oh, this also stood for the Medievalathon challenge for a crown. A character fights for the crown, which definitely does happen in this. I really enjoyed this. I have watched the movie before, so I do have a fondness for the plot, which I think helped. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. I don't think it's perfect. There are a few racially insensitive comments that I think were included to date the book into a timeline, but I don't think were necessary. And some of my favorite parts from the movie are not in here, which is just like a, oh, alright, obviously this came first, so it's fine. But especially the ending in this feels a little anticlimactic, because obviously for the movie they changed the ending to increase the pace and energy, because this kind of ending would not have worked on film. And I personally enjoyed the faster, more high action ending than this, which is more kind of like a little clever, neat wrap up without any action. But I really enjoyed this. Tristan, who's our main character, we essentially follow him as he goes on an adventure into the fairylands to find a fallen star. Tristan's an idiot. But that's kind of the point. It's meant to be his like growth and development, but he's an idiot. But it was hilarious to read from. I love Yvain. And I personally really like the whole plotline, but also a lot of these scenes are like scene for the movie. So I can imagine the actors and everything like that. So that probably helped my enjoyment, but I gave it 4 stars. I know a lot of people didn't like it, even people who have watched the movie. So I don't know, maybe I'm the odd one out here. So that was my Bard Path done, and then I went to every other location on the map. So the next one I visited was, or at least the next one in my list, because I'm not doing it in the order I read them over the month. If you wanted to see that, check out my vlogs. I was vlogging all month. So for Crimson Peaks, which is the next one, was to reread a fave, and for that I read Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman. I considered this a reread because I'd read some of it. Well, it was a webcomic on Tumblr. Not all of it, but some of it, and I read through the whole thing this time. It is super sweet. So this is a comic series following Nick and Charlie from Solitaire. If you've read Solitaire, you're familiar with Nick and Charlie, and this is kind of their love story in more detail in a comic format, and it's honestly so sweet. I love it so much. They're so cute. I gave this 5 stars, primarily for the cuteness. It had me squeeing. The next spot on the path is Queendom Stone, featuring royalty, and for that I read Crest by Marissa Meyer, which is the 3rd book in the Lunar Chronicles. it features royalty. Trust me, if you have not read enough, it does. It's kind of spoilery, but it does feature royalty. This is obviously a set of fairy tale retellings, and this one follows Rapunzel, but also all the characters from the previous installments. I really enjoyed this. I can't remember what I ended up rating it. Let me have a look. 4 stars. I think this series is really fun, but I don't think it's anything super amazing. It's a sci-fi retelling of these fantasy tales, and I think they're well done. I think everyone's heard of Lunar Chronicles by now. I think they're well done, but they're nothing like groundbreaking in their writing or anything. I listened to this on audiobook, and I do like Rebecca Solaire's narration. She's a really good audiobook narrator. So if you see anything by her, I would recommend those as audiobooks that she narrates. And it was good as an audiobook, but I don't think it was absolutely amazing. It was just 4 stars. Then we have The Forgotten Forest, which is next in a series, and for that I read Deceptive by Emily Lloyd-Jones, which is the sequel to Elusive. This also went for Keep, which is red on the dust jacket. Counting this bit here in the middle, there's more orange from counting it as red. This is a superhero series, so essentially we follow a world where there was a vaccine for some kind of disease, and the vaccine causes people to develop some people to develop superpowers, and they're kind of made into second-class citizens, and it kind of follows that. We follow Sierre, who is an illusionist, and she's a bit of a criminal. It's great. I really enjoyed this series, and this second one was no exception. It was really good. I think I even liked it better than the first one because the pacing was a little better, and I ended up giving it a 3.75 stars. It was really fast and easy to get through, but I don't think it's super like complex, but it did have some nuanced takes on like refugees and stuff. I enjoyed it. I think I would even bump that up a little bit now on hindsight. It might be closer to a 4. It's a 3.75, but like feels 4-ish. Then we have The Weeping Falls, which is a tearjerker, and for that I read Kindred, which is 12 queer lovers YA stories by a bunch of authors. I ended up giving this, did this go for anything in the other one? No. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. I enjoyed some stories more than others. I think some of my favorites were, oh, I can't remember anymore. I really liked Sweet by Claire G. Coleman. I really liked, crap, I can't remember anymore. In Case of Emergency Break Glass, I liked Sweet. I think I liked Waiting. Though all of them I could recall them if I flicked through them again, but I'm having trouble remembering. So overall I liked some of these, didn't like some of these as much, but overall they were between 3 and 5. There's nothing I think I really didn't like. There may be one that I can remember, which just like emotionally worked, but not quite the way I think it was intended. And overall I really enjoyed this anthology. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this anthology, so it got a 4 stars, but often anthologies for me are only 3 stars, so I'm pretty impressed with this one. One of the better anthologies I've read. Then we have Dwarf Mount, something with a hint of romance, and for that I read King of Fools by Amanda Foody, which is the sequel to Ace of Shades. This also went for Leggings, a thick paperback for the Medievalathon. It is a thick boy. He thick. And this is a queer-ish, it's queer, but it's not like gay queer, it's just queer. Gangster mobster kind of story. We follow N and Levi in the first book. Levi's bisexual, biracial, I believe, and N is bisexual, maybe Ace? I can't remember. There's definitely a wide range of representation in here, and we follow like a casino city, and there's a lot of underground criminal dealings, and it's really fascinating. There is a bit of a like no time jump, but also a bit of a time jump from book 1 to book 2, and or more like this book has a lot of time jumps within it, where it skipped like long periods of time where not much was happening, which was occasionally confusing. But overall I really enjoyed this. A lot happens, we've got a lot going on, and the position from the start to the end is intense. I can't wait to read book 3. if you like a slow burn romance with like genuine conflict, not just miscommunication, this be your jam. It's so good. The romance is so good. Then we have Apothecary Palace, which just was to randomize your TBR. And for that I read, I'm just checking it's not anywhere else. Nope. For that I read Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, which is the sequel to Red Rising. This was on my 5-star sequels TBR jar, so randomizing my TBR. I have mixed feelings about this. I ended up giving it, oh, I didn't say. I gave King of Fools 4 stars. I gave this 3.75 stars. I have mixed feelings about this series. We all know Pierce Brown doesn't write ladies very well. They're very one-dimensional. I was bored for the first, maybe a third, maybe even a half. The second half, once all the action kicked in, blew my mind. The ending terrified me, like in a good way. And so I really want to see how that plays out in book 3. But the first, yeah, first little bit with where it was a lot of political maneuvering and setup, but without any action, I guess. Like, it was very dull in the first third, and then all the action happened later. But the action that did happen was good. Once the action was key in, I liked it. I don't like Darrow as a character. He's not very good. Like, he's an asshole. But I don't think you're meant to like, if you're meant to like him. But he's not, he's very morally grey, so I don't think you're meant to particularly like him. I do want to see where book 3 goes. I'm not sure if I'll finish this series as a whole, but I definitely will finish the first trilogy. We'll see how I feel at the end of that. I do own Iron Gold, but can I be bothered? Who knows? We'll see if Morningstar has a solid pace the whole way through. Maybe it was just second book slump. I give that a 3.75. Then we have The Great Library, which is a TBR veteran, and for this I read, sorry, I'm just keeping check on whether things also went for other challenges. That's why I keep looking down. Like, I feel like I'm just doing a bit of this, but sorry. So this is my TBR vet. This is The Alchemist by Nicholas Flamel. I ended up reading this on audiobook. I'm gonna restart my camera 1 second. I listened to this on audiobook. It was a reread technically. I have read this before, but this series is a TBR vet on my wall, on my bookshelf. Again, it's a series that I read when I was a kid, but I never finished. I think I only read the first 2 books. So I'm rereading from the start, and they're on script, so I'm listening to them on audiobook. So this is the first book. These are Nicholas Flamel stories following 2 kids, Sophie and Josh, who get caught up with Nicholas Flamel in like modern times. I really enjoyed this. It was great fun. I didn't remember much, which is saying something, because I've definitely read this at least once. And I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's kind of like middle grade, early young adult, and I think it just is a little simple. But it would definitely be perfect for the audience. It's not perfect for me, but it's perfect for the target audience. It is a little bit dated as well. I think it reads a lot of its time, but this era of that lower end YA I think is still really valuable, because I feel like we've moved away from that. We don't have a lot of it anymore. That kind of like border ground between young adult and middle grade, where it's a little bit more complicated than middle grade, but like high middle grade, low young adult. I feel like that area has been a bit neglected lately, and this is still, I think, really good for that age group. I would definitely recommend it. Then we have The Drowning Deep, which is something with rich world building, and for that I read 7 Surrenders by Ada Palmer, and this also goes for daggers in Medievalathon, which is something featuring assassins. It does, in a bit of a convoluted way, but it does. This is the sequel to Like the Lightning, which I read earlier this year or last year. I think it counts, trying to get in. I love this series. I don't know why, because it's complicated, hard, it's very dense. Like, there are a lot of things that I shouldn't like about it, but somehow I love it. It always blows my mind. It's a sci-fi set in a far future where movement between countries has been so broken down that everyone can get everywhere really fast, and so everyone, instead of belonging to countries, belongs to hives, which are kind of like-minded individuals that all have a similar philosophy, and that system has been working really well for 300 years but only because of secret reasons that you've learned about in book 1, and this is kind of following as those reasons are revealed to the wider populace. We kind of followed the really powerful people in society in this, and it's really interesting to see how all the politics play out. It's very political. This book's a little bit more action heavy than book 1 in my opinion, and they are incredibly dense, but if you enjoy a kind of like more heavy sciencey sci-fi, I think you will really enjoy this. I love this. I'm really excited to read book 3. I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars. 4.5 stars. It was also a 5-star predicts sequel, I think. So it was close, it was close. Then we have Orc Grove, something gory, gruesome, or gritty, and for that I read The Heart Forger by Rin Chupeco, which is a necromancy story. It's a sequel to The Bone Witch. We follow T, who is the Bone Witch. And she is a necromancer that it has like a lot of, there's like 2 timelines, and in one timeline she's evil and in the other time she's like slowly becoming evil, if that makes sense. It's like a villain origin story. This also went for Axe in Medievalathon, something featuring mercenaries, which it does kind of, I did kind of wrangle that one a little bit. This is I ended up giving this a, what did I end up giving it? A 3 stars. I have problems with it, but they're not problems you would expect, I think, and it really depends, I think, on how you read this series, what kind of rating you will give it. If you read this series in one fell swoop and marathon them, you will love it. My problem is that there is like no plot dropping of what happened in the first book to guide you along. Like, it does no guiding. I had only like less than a year gap between these, I think, and I'd forgotten so much of book 1, and normally that's not a problem because the book will kind of guide you along with things that are happening and how they relate to what happened in book 1 in a very subtle way, but this didn't do any of that, so I was really struggling to keep track of what was happening. I couldn't really remember how characters related to each other, only the very main ones, and trying to figure all that out and where everyone was at was very complicated. I've written down the plot of this for when I go on to read book 3 because I definitely think I need that summary for myself, and there's no summaries available online for book 1 that I could find, so frustrating. But the actual characters and plot I like. I just wish that I understood what was happening in this. Like, I felt really lost and put in the deep end. I remember I didn't like the first one too much because I thought it like had scene for scenes from Memoirs of a Geisha, and I didn't realize it was a retelling. I thought it was like a loosely inspired by, and they kind of like got on my nerves a bit, but otherwise I really enjoyed it. This, it wasn't like Memoirs of a Geisha, so I would have really enjoyed it if I'd carried on straight away, but because it didn't do that little like guiding stuff, I really struggled. So marathon this series if you have it on your shelf. Marathon it. I'm definitely going to try and read Shadowglass sooner rather than later, which is the 3rd book. Next we have Old Pirate Cove, which is or Old Pirate Road, I can't remember anymore, which is something set at sea, and for that, or at least partially at sea, and for that I read Don't Date Rosa Santos by Nina Moreno. I'm blanking, but this is a YA contemporary featuring Rosa Santos, who is Cuban American, and she's living with her abuela, and her mother is kind of like a distant mother. She goes and is like an artist that travels America and doesn't really see Rosa or her abuela very often. So Rosa kind of got raised by her abuela, and they're in this little town, I think it's Port Coral, and she's dealing with figuring out where she wants to go to college. She's picked a particular college because they have an exchange program back to Cuba, and she really wants to visit her island. I loved this. It's got a little sweet romance that is just adorable. It's a lot about connection to culture and place, and I really enjoyed those aspects. I just loved this. It was so sweet, just the kind of contemporary I needed. I listened to it on audiobook, and the audiobook narration is great, and I ended up giving this 4.75 stars. I freaking loved it. It was so good. I would definitely recommend it. And I can't wait to read more from Nina Moreno. I'm pretty sure her next book is also set around Port Coral, but featuring different characters. So I'm really excited to see how Rosa and the gang are going. Then the next spot is Glimmer, which is something beautiful or colourful. And for that I read another audiobook, and this is Magic for Liars by... I'll look it up. I'm blanking. This also worked for Sword, something pointy on the cover for Medievalathon. And by that I mean the sticky uppy finger. Sarah Gailey wrote Magic for Liars. This is a fantasy noir story, which I absolutely loved. We follow our main character, who is her and her twin sister. Her twin sister's magic and went to magic school. She was not magic and went on to become a detective, but she's been hired to solve a magic crime that happened at her sister's school that her sister works at. And it was so good. It's an adult noir fantasy. Noir fantasy is my new favorite genre. Throw more at me, please. I do love a noir book anyway. Like, that's a great type of thriller. A noir, a proper noir, not this like kind of, not a normal detective thriller, but a noir one that really like gets into that is amazing. And this added the fantasy element that I was like, yes, amazing. I really loved this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I can't remember what I docked a star for. Not sure. Check out my Goodreads review, but I definitely would recommend this. It's so good, and the audiobook was great. And finally we have Draconic Isle, which is something featuring dragons, obviously, and it also went for Helmet in Medievalathon, which is something with dragons on the cover. And for that I read The Fire Eternal by Chris DeLacy. This is the 4th book in the Last Dragon Chronicles, which I've been reading. I'd read the first 2.5 books before, and this is the first one I'd never touched. And this is a time jump from the previous book, which I think kind of doesn't work in its favor. I ended up giving this a 3 stars. This essentially follows David Rain, who comes as a lodger to live with the Penny Kettles, and the Penny Kettles make little clay dragons that kind of have magical powers. And it's a lot broader than that, but that's the premise of book 1. The time jump was nuts. The things that happened at the end of book 3 and how they play into this was nuts. I think my biggest problem with this series is that the first part of the book is often a lot of setup and it's pretty slow. The middle bit is really good, and then the ending is normally amazing. But in this one I found the ending confusing. I didn't really understand what was happening in the like concluding moments of how everything wrapped up. I was a bit confused. It just went really fast and didn't explain things super well. But I'm definitely really excited to see where it goes in the next book. Also, I'm forever thankful because this book has that awful, I find it really difficult, the really thick, bright white paper that's really hard and not floppy at all. But the next book is floppy, so yay! So these are all the books that I read in the month of July. I'm looking forward to what I'm reading in August. I'm really excited for everything on my TBR. I'm so excited. Comment down below if you've read any of these. I would love to chat with you about them down below. And otherwise, I will see you soon with another video.